morning, Aristo. Or good afternoon, is it to you?
Yes, it's 1:11 now. Where I am.
111. Well, that's a good time to start. So
Ex-
let's go, and you can take the lead wherever you want to take it.
Well, unless you have something specific to say, this week has been chock full of issues and things brought up and events. And, I think that reflects the situation these days that things are becoming more compact and more contracted. It seems that we're dealing with a lot more stuff in a lot less time. And it may not seem that way when you go through a crisis, but if you notice that there are crises upon crises and little things one after the other, then you can actually see it happening. But, even astrologically, there have been some crazy, stress angles and stuff. Tension is building up in the time stream, and tension builds up and tension is released. And you mentioned this whole thing about Bill's position and other people's position, and I've long held this that we cannot be specifically on the same page nor be forced to be on any same page. The point is to bind those pages into a book and understand our relationships enough so that book tells a story that has meaning. Each page is in its proper order or place in relation to all the other pages. So that means basically, if you do what you truly desire, what you truly want first, no holds barred, and trust that the situation is what you truly want, then you don't have to worry about what other people are doing. Because you're doing what you want to do helps them find their place. Everybody looks at the whole situation in terms of the book, in terms of the grand story that's unfolding, whether they do so consciously or not. So if any one of us is true to ourselves, it's not that the other people say, oh, I got to do what that person is doing. But they understand where they want to be because they have a milestone, a marker in that other person. So, oh, there's chapter 6. Oh, yeah, so I must be chapter 4. That's where my relationship goes to that. Because yeah,
Go ahead.
I've had people come to me and say, what should I do? What's the truth? How should I go about things? And at this point, I have to say, look, like people like me and like Bill, Bill said he had 30 years, 35 years of martial arts experience. I've been, meditating since 1982. And it's beyond meditation. From there, moving into deep yoga, into other things, into various occult things, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Constant in-depth research, along with many shamanic experiences and theogenic substances, this and that and the other. Other people don't have that, So I can't tell people, well, do what I did, or here's what you have to do. However, and like you said, you have certain abilities. I mean, this speaking in tongues is a recognized ability. It's basically spontaneous mantra. When you do this, you exercise the power of the word without cultural restrictions, without restrictions of your current incarnation, for example. You go into a position where your deeper self says, okay, these vibrations are what you need, but your current language or the way you access it doesn't have these vibrations. You cannot exercise the power of the word. So when you experience an ability, I mean, take note of it. In my opinion, take note of it and say, here's a strength, and this is something that I have, and there's another ability that I have. You speak of the top of the mountain experience. How many people can actually do that? Many people go and well, I relax, I take a few breaths, I go out in nature. But the actual top of, which is relative, I mean, there's higher mountains, lower mountains, whatever, variations on the theme. But you go through all of this hell, so to speak, again, relatively speaking, and then you enter this top of the mountain experience, and it's not just that you escape it and go to the top of the mountain. You go into a place where you plug all of the parts of yourself that are suffering into an energy that can help heal them and bring them to the level of greater capacity to deal with it. So somebody like Bill, for example, who has so much martial arts experience, is capable of doing certain things, but he may not be able to access the top of the mountain experience in a way that you can access it. So if he was involved as you are involved, for example, with the deep emotional, grounded participation, the empathic immersion, where he's a little more Buddhist, he's a little more, distanced in the sense of psychological distance. He may be in it, but within his being, he's in his own space. He's created that space, he's proud of it. I believe his martial arts training has helped him move into that, as well as his connection with his, the Archangel Michael and all this, the other things. But he doesn't have the resources to do what you're doing. And in your case, there's a development of resources. I mean, you have these resources that Christian mysticism, even though fundamentalists may not completely recognize it, but these are mystical capacities. You talked about Anastasia and all of that, but you have several of these capacities, and you have other capacities that are just waiting to be awakened. I'm sure you can sense that. And part of the reason that these challenges come is not just for collective service and all of that, but is to remind you that, you can't really get beyond this problem unless you awaken so-and-so capacity. So, it's almost like, but you're not going to awaken that capacity. You haven't so far because there hasn't been a stimulus. Unfortunately, we are hardwired by nature. We are still in 3D. If you go to so-called 5D, which is really 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's not 0, 0, 0 and 2 dimensions over there, the 2 higher dimensions. We're talking about three dimensions containing, 2 more. And I would say there's a 6th dimension, because my whole viewpoint of dimensions is in triads. If you have 3 dimensions of space, you can experience 3 dimensions of time. And there are also 3 dimensions of consciousness. So it's a 3, 3, 3 type of thing. And Hebrew mystics also, I'm kind of flying all over the place, but you are familiar with the vision of Ezekiel.
Yeah, and the wheel within a wheel.
The wheels within wheels. And this pertained to the macrocosm on the one hand, because the wheel was the zodiac, the orbit of the Earth, the cycle of the planets, and all of this. But it also pertained to the microcosmic holographic body that contained the macrocosm, with the holy 4 directions that correspond to these 4 royal stars and the 4 corners and the faces. Each corner has 4 faces, and they represent these animals because the zodiac animals, etc., etc. This was a mystical process of awakening the merkaba body. And so when you have these dynamics of, where was I going with this actually? The space-time. The merkaba body has axes, and Drumvolo Melchizedek, for example, addresses only one aspect of it. My association of it is that it's a sphere. It's not pyramids intersecting each other. Stars are spheres, galaxies. It's a sphere with a plane. Like you have the spiral galaxy moving, but it's really encompassed in a spherical cloud. And from the axis, you have energies moving up. They move around the arc of the sphere and then into the equator and down and up and into a double Torah. You remember the Thrive movie?
Yes, I do.
This is the... Yeah. This is the... I'll let you say what you wanted to say because I'm rambling. I'm on disinhibited...
Autopilot?
Well, not conscious autopilot. There's just so much, and I've written to you a couple of emails saying that, well, we can discuss this, and then there's the personal thing, and then there's this other thing. But basically what I want to say is that it depends on where you are, and the obligation or thing we all need to consider is where we are has treasure. Instead of looking at the treasure the other person is talking about, look at your treasure. I don't believe in contracts personally. That metaphor kind of is a little iffy with me. We came here with a contract. We came here with an aspiration. We came here with a desire, a dream. The world is a field of dreams, and each of us embodies a dream. We are, as Jesus might have said, we are like planters. Each of us carries a bag of seeds that we want to see flourish in a certain garden scenario. So the world is the garden of the fulfillment of our dreams, and we are learning to be gardeners. So everybody has a certain species of seed that they want to plant, as you said, in a certain way to cultivate those seeds. My whole thing is that I'm moving in a certain direction with things like the power of the word, the merkaba body, prophetic abilities, scanning the situation, the timelines, and all of this, that have nothing much to do with what I can offer to people, for example, on your Facebook page, which form a certain continuum. These people, however, they have many things in common. We all have these things in common, that we're concerned about the world, but there's this spiritual orientation, there's this esoteric, in-depth orientation that may have different facets, but you don't see it elsewhere in other groups of people. They may be considering it, or they have viewpoints, or they may have an occult orientation, but now you're seeing the whole New Age thing shift into a world concern dynamic. And some people, it wasn't like that at first. Before it was just like, be nice to people, everything's fine, you know. So the people like Bill are also more conservatives in that. They're like how the New Age used to be before these crises began, because they came to terms with the fight instinct, the aggression, the way the fear is presented in terms of conflict, in terms of confrontation. So the context was different. And then there's a whole bunch of karma. And it's like, well, I have a cousin who's a Buddhist, and he practices Tai Chi. And this guy, his whole youth, he used to get into fights, to the point that his best friend got into a fight, and he fell in the New York subway, and he either got killed or severely hurt by a train. But the whole thing is, now this guy is he believes in grounding and pacifism. The attitude of that kind of thing, of fighting and all that, is different than the attitude of fighting the system. It's not the same. I don't even think the same words should be used, but our language is limited. Hence, even the sense that, why you speak in tongues, for example, to make a certain connection. You wanted to connect in frequencies that were not available in English. So when we listen to each other, it's very difficult to be sure of where the other person is coming from. Even I'm not sure if I can actually responsibly say where Bill is coming from. It's just how he's expressed and his background and all of this. But if I know where I'm coming from, I can say, look, this guy's okay. He's fine where he is. But he's giving advice or suggestions from where he is. He doesn't.
And we all do that.
Exactly. And he expresses in these suggestions, his subcontext for me is, I don't want to be where you are. I don't want to go there. It's not my place. Even if I was there, it would be meaningless, because those abilities are not. There are many people in the world who are like children. The majority of people are like infants. They don't want to develop abilities. They don't want to develop higher consciousness. They want to be not dependent on the system, but nurtured by their environment in some way, given a certain sense of guarantee that, there's a social safety net, life goes on, you're not going to be attacked. There's law. The law protects you. If you go into and please stop me if I go over time here, but if you go into a situation and you're empowered, you don't need the law. First of all, you're not going to do something that harms people. And second of all, you're able to manifest your own reality. You really don't have to worry about it. But the law is for people who want to be protected. The problem is when you transition from the childhood state into an adolescent state and you start revolting. So you want to create your own authority. You want to create your own space, and people are also having a hard time with that. And all of this in the midst of these crazy pedophiles who have an agenda. And if we have time, I'd like to express what their contract is. Through my own esoteric experiences, I feel that I have connected to that contract and my certain knowledge of physics. These are the transhumanists movement. They're a specific branch. They're the ones that are most in charge these days. What they want to do is, you notice they're building these super colliders, right? And the super colliders are looking for the God particle. Now, computers run on electrons, and these people want to merge with computers. But you can't just stick your mind separate from your body into a computer. That's what they tell other people to do to get rid of them. Your body can be in some vault deep in the earth or in orbit and hidden, and basically you're plugged in and your consciousness goes out and you can become the network and control the world. Well, this only happens if you have electricity or maybe even light. What happens, however, if instead of the electron forming the programming, which is the form of awareness and all of that and expression, the body becomes electrons basically. Instead of being molecules in biology, it's electrons. Or in terms of optical circuits, it's photons. But what if it becomes the God particle? Well, that means they can use the hardware of the universe. They believe they can merge with space-time, and thus the body of space-time becomes their body, and they awaken as a God. And then they control everything. All the laws of the universe, creation, destruction. But the catch is that there can be only one. You can't have several of them going around. There can be only one intelligence presiding over all other sub-aspects when you do it that way, because it's essentially one big ego. And that is
Megalomania.
A megalomania to the, bow down for me and awe, take over every molecule, every subatomic particle, basically storm the gates of heaven, take over God, this and that and the other.
They will destroy themselves, which is what they're doing.
Well, the timeline has happened. You might call it a simulated, in the probability field, it exists, and it's a dead end. And many of us who live now have had experience of having gone through that timeline. So, they want to do it, and they have partial experience, but they say, well, we want to do it with everybody else, sacrificed. It's always basically because there's a reason for them wanting to do it. They don't want to face something. There is something there that they do not want to face, but we can face it for them. And that is the stimulus, that's the contract, because they faced it before everything else did. They were like on the vanguard of evolution, they faced something, it infected them, they warped and mutated, and this and that level of being, let's say. And now everything that witnessed it from a distance is now coming up to that point and saying, okay, we have all the experience now that we can deal with what you couldn't address, and as we do, we will heal you and ourselves and move from there. Because they have the experience and the passion of transcending frontiers. Until they heal, we are not free to transcend the ultimate frontiers of our being, which doesn't mean that we're going to become disembodied, but basically we're going to be what we were meant to be. And right now, if anybody even moves into that direction, they experience extreme fear, and that fear can be traced back to them, but is it also our fear? They fear the godhood that they seek. It is a tremendous paradox, and that's why they want to keep compromising it. The natural godhood terrifies them, because they saw its true face, and its true face is freedom. And when there's freedom, you're responsible for everything in your own experience.
You can't pass the buck anymore or hide behind corporation,
You can't hide behind God even. You basically, your parents, you don't need parents anymore. You get to a point where you've transcended your childhood and your adolescence, and now you are embodying divinity to the point that divinity doesn't have to come to you as a parent anymore. And you don't want it that way. It's everywhere, it's everything, it's you, it flourishes. But then what happens? Frontiers open. And if you look at the mythologies of the Illuminati, all of these things, certain horror stories, any kind of power, the whole power for ups thing comes from their psyche. It doesn't come from ours because, when you don't have the experience of that kind of level of karma, power doesn't corrupt. It's a natural progression. But there's always a limit into ultimate responsibility, and existence basically reached a glitch there for a reason, because everything has to catch up to where they are for the situation to be resolved. And that's what they're afraid of. Basically, they're living in fear, and they're pushing the fear on us. There's fear that we need to face because it's immediate, and there's fear that we don't really need to face because they need to be in contact with it before we also face it. My whole thing in manifesting is to equalize karma. If I'm going to be accepting my fear, I want everybody to be accepting their fear.
Let me just do a brief subject. You're right next door to Turkey, and of course there's a lot of stuff going on across the sea there. How is that affecting you in Greece, or is it?
I believe it's affecting the whole world because, and I'm glad you asked that question. Notice there was a video that I posted on my own Facebook page from a Turkish person, 8 minutes describing the situation. And I sent it to several people. The next day, the video was taken down. It was removed from my Facebook page and all of their Facebook pages. And all this guy said was, I'm afraid they're going to be knocking on the door any minute now, because he just expressed what the situation is. This guy basically has embodied the spirit of Genghis Khan. The Illuminati are using him because he's a power man in the old tradition, like Caesar or Alexander or something like that. And he has learned to blackmail them, in my opinion, from my inner perspective, basically, that if I go, then this whole place collapses. You see, Turkey is one of the few countries where they tolerate, it has its own factories that make weapons. They don't just import weapons. And Erdogan had cancer before, just like Chavez and the others. He had the same intestinal cancer because he was just going off on his own, and he got this cancer. He had 3 operations. All of a sudden, he's as good as new. He went back to the program. They obviously gave him some kind of antidote to these diseases that they offer, because the thing is, Syria cannot progress and Persia cannot fall. Nothing can move unless Turkey is going along with the program. This is not the same as Arab Spring, which was instigated by them. It's not the same as the European occupied movements, which Europeans basically were living okay and they decided they had enough. But as soon as the Molotov started flowing and the agent provocateurs started coming and the gas started going, they basically stepped back. They got scared. These people are occupying because they're tired of being afraid. They've reached the point where they're so terrified that you're just sick of it. And then they realize that they're beyond fear now. And so there's a natural progression of, yes, you have now, maybe you have not integrated the fear, but some of us have. Others working are digesting this fear. It's not just stepping apart from it. Maybe others need to, but some of us need to keep digesting it, transforming it, and it has a holographic effect. The person who's doing nothing actually feels, well, I'm just tired of being here. And somehow,
What happened?
Oh, I'm sorry. I pounded my fist on the table and my camera fell off.
What happened?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I pounded my fist on the table and the camera fell off the computer.
Oh, wow.
So, I didn't notice that. Okay, I'm sorry. So anyways, the situation is such that if they don't get back on track, and notice that certain people like Ike and Jones and other things, they're not focusing on Turkey. They're focusing on the Bilderbergers and stuff. It's not a coincidence that these two things are happening at the same time. There are energies coming through now, and there's a tremendous wave of fear that the Illuminati now are pushing forth in order to shut things down. You see, because the Turkish people are revolting because they're fed up with fear, they're in a different phase than the rest of the world. Plus, in the mystical teachings, Turkey and the Balkans and the Middle East, they're like a power vortex. The power vortex is full of little vortices, each one having a different harmonic, a different vibration. So now these vibrations are coming together. You have so many subcultures in Turkey, but now they're all rising up. Out of 80 provinces, 60 are officially risen, and it's continuing. So I believe this is a major crux event, because anybody needs to rise up. These people, and it's completely unforeseen. These people, the Illuminati, realized in their timeline predictions that something was coming, but they didn't think it was gonna be Turkey. They thought it was gonna be in the power vortex that they predicted, either somewhere in the Arab world that they could control, or in the Balkans. I mean, we've been sprayed with all hell. And I could sense the electromagnetics and all the repressive stuff. And I was wondering, why are they doing this at this particular time? So they thought the Turkish people were, they never revolted in their whole history. They were always a people of go along, tradition, get along. But at this point, they've given them enough of a mixture of East and Western cultures that they basically they're in the nexus. And it's a very important nexus, and I believe this is where a great probability of seed events can begin occurring. So, I'm very excited.
Yeah, it's certainly fascinating where we are right now, and you know, I have my personal issues with my friend from Canada, which we will resolve.
Yes.
She did get her computer finally. I had a couple of friends make donations, and she was able to now at least get back on the internet. She was going to the library, which wouldn't even allow her to watch my videos.
Well,
but as of last night, she was back in it with a computer again, and I'm very thankful for that. And we will work out something. I don't know what yet. We're discussing.
There's a reason for it too. And if you're wondering, the reason is you've hit upon a karmic knot that many people are experiencing. They do not want meaningful things to happen because meaningful things create the power of fulfillment. And so if you get together with her and if you become free, then this spreads all over the world like a virus. Just like, but you're digesting the fear and everything else in order to bring yourself into a healing space where you can have meaningful fulfillment. But the reality is saying, okay, Ron, take it slower a little bit, you know, face everything in greater detail because this is compact karma. You've got all of these compact, thousands of years and thousands of lifetimes, not just for you, for everybody, compact into event structures like this, into event unfoldings like this. So it's based, and remember your resources and all of the abilities that you have and the ones that we want. I believe we're pretty much coming into the tail end of the...
Yeah, it's just about 30 minutes right now, and of course I'm going to cut a little bit out at the beginning.
Okay.
So it'll be, you know, I actually like to keep them under 30 minutes. I didn't do that with Bill's, but...
if you can cut stuff out from the middle, you know.
Yeah, I can take things out. And maybe I should take out the part where you knock the camera off the table, although people might find that interesting, though. It's very human, you know. Okay, see?
I think they will, because if my voice drones on and they basically, you know, oh, what's he talking about, too much information, it sends a shake-up that might bring their attention back. I'm anxious.
Well, I always do appreciate the conversations, and
sorry if I rambled on so much this time. I mean,
this time was more than the previous times, but that's okay. You've covered a lot of ground, and I'll figure out a blurb, and we will touch base again next Wednesday and do the next chapter.
Absolutely. There's a lot that can happen till then.
Yes.
Thank you, Ron.
Thank you. Namaste. Bye-bye.